Alrighty here. All right, we got the basketball game wrapping up here. Playoff game, playoff rankings coming up in a minute. If anybody's here, just throw questions in the chat. Just want to react to everybody and just kind of have a conversation here. Don't really have any plans other than that. Just me tonight. Just want to see if anybody shows up and if this does anything. So feel free. Let's go. Let's get to the rankings. Come on. Well, it's not a pretty basketball game. That is for sure. That is a Michigan State tradition to start out the season. Let's go. There we go. College Football Playoff Show is starting. And I realized I chose the wrong camera for the stream. My bad. I've been in that meeting room before. It's at the Grapevine. So it's at the Gaylord Hotel in Grapevine, Texas. Gigantic hotel. And it's kind of like the room is like way down like a hallway. You got to go in the elevators and pretty far down. It's kind of off to the side, and it's pretty nondescript, really. Then we got a commercial. Very curious where Alabama is, where BYU is, and where Ole Miss is. Those, I think, are my biggest questions. Still waiting for the show to start here. We're at a commercial. If anybody's has any thoughts, what are you guys looking for? What are you guys waiting on? What do you guys want to see happen? You guys know my rankings. The 134 is out. I've got BYU much higher than the committee. We'll see. I can't imagine barely beating Utah was going to help. So we'll see. Kind of wild that Ohio State, Indiana is one of the biggest games of the year. That's cool. I mean, Indiana hasn't beaten Ohio State in what? Decades? 30, 40 years, I think it's been. That is wild. That is why Indiana is probably the story of the season. That is fun. All righty, we got the show. Got a commercial for it. Curious if they revealed the teams in the same order this time. I think going from bottom up was not the right way to do it the first time around because the drama is at the bottom. The drama's not at the top. It doesn't matter where Ohio State and Georgia compared because it literally didn't matter. So see if they do it in the same order. I didn't mind doing the ranking and the playoff bracket at the same time. Hey, Bees, and appreciate you jumping over from the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Anybody, if you like pro wrestling, got a podcast on that as well, Getting Over. Cade, how far does Miami fall? I had them fall 10 spots. I had them fall from number 4 to number 14 in my rankings. We'll see if the committee feels that way. I mean, their only notable win is Louisville, and I guess Duke maybe. But you lose to a Georgia Tech team that's what, 6-4. That's going to hurt, and that's why the ACC is in big trouble right now, because I don't know if there's a path to 2 bids at this point. Because if SMU and Miami win out, your best case scenario, if one of them drops in the conference championship game, are they going to be hurt by that? We don't know how the committee is going to handle conference championship games. Like, theoretically, if there's an SEC team in there that gets a 3rd loss, you could say, well, they only got that because they were in that game. They shouldn't be hurt by it, which is fine. But is the same thing going to apply to the ACC? That's what we don't know. All right, we got the show starting here. Hopefully they just get to the rankings. As annoying as it and not knowing when it starts, when it's the basketball version of the show, they usually get to it pretty quickly because they have to. Sam, thanks for joining up. Yeah, is Boise going to be over SMU? I don't know. It's a good question. Let me see what they were last week. Yeah, Boise was ahead of SMU. I think I have them reversed in my rankings. It's a good question. I mean, they beat Nevada. It's a close game throughout. I don't know if it ultimately really matters, because the only way Boise State's going to move up to kind of possibly take a top 4 seed is if BYU loses. And that hasn't happened yet. Reese Davis is great, by the way. He is really good at this stuff. Alrighty, we're going to the top 25 here. Let's see what we got. Number 25, Tulane. How about that? That means you're going to have 2 American teams in the top 25. Because if Boise State drops another game, the American champ is going to be right there. Army, number 24. 9-0, 8-2. The American schedule was really weird this year. A lot of the really good teams didn't play each other. Army didn't play Navy. Army's not playing Tulane. Didn't play Memphis. Missouri, 23. I didn't like them being in there last week, but they kind of had to be. I didn't want to have them in there this week, but then the Oklahoma game happens. 23 Missouri, 22 LSU. They dropped 7 spots from a week ago. Army at 24, it does kind of feel low, but they have their best wins are North Texas and East Carolina. The Notre Dame game is really going to be the story. South Carolina up to 21. I like it. However, LSU beat South Carolina. Why is South Carolina 1 spot ahead of LSU? They played each other. This is the thing I don't understand. This is the thing I don't understand about the rankings. Like, okay. Clemson at 20. That's fun. Clemson, South Carolina back-to-back. Okay. I think I have Clemson lower. I've got them closer to 25. Number 19, Louisville. Highest rank. I think that's probably the highest ranked 3-loss team. That seems high to me. They don't have many good. They beat Clemson, I guess. 18, Washington State, 8-1. Reminder about Washington State: they cannot take the Group of 5 bid. They can only get an at-large bid, which at this point seems unlikely. It's hard to see them getting in the top 10 there. Colorado, number 17. That feels fair. I don't think Colorado has an at-large path. I mean, if they can get to the Big 12 championship game on their own, but if they lose that game, a third loss again. Does that hurt them playing in a conference championship game? But it's wild that Deion Sanders has a path to the college football playoff in year 2 in November. He's done a really good job there. As much as everybody kind of went overboard about it last year, you have to credit that. Shedeur Sanders is a stud. Major respect. It's number 16, Kansas State. Now that makes sense. Kansas State beat Colorado, so they're one spot ahead of Colorado. That's what I have in my rankings. That's what it should be. I cannot for the life of me understand that South Carolina LSU ranking. Kansas State, Iowa State at the end of the year is going to be a really interesting game. And number 15, Texas A&M, dropping one spot, which makes sense. You're going to have Alabama move up. Ole Miss is moving up. By the way, if anybody has any questions, throw it in the chat. We're just kind of having a conversation. So I'm reacting to it live here. Have some thoughts when it's done. It really is hard to explain the college football playoff to normal people who don't follow college football. The buys. Number 14, SMU. So Boise State remains ahead of them. SMU dropped, I think, one spot. They were the first team out last time because, again, not Alabama, but Ole Miss will be jumping in. Boise State, 13. They're the number 12 seed. Boise State's got a sneaky, difficult schedule. Keep an eye. I mean, they got San Jose State, pretty good, decent team. Kenny Machalolo's doing a good job there. They got Oregon State on Thanksgiving weekend and potentially the Big 12 championship. Georgia is out. Georgia, number 12, the first team out. I think I had Notre Dame there in my rankings, but Georgia, which has beaten Texas and has played, I think, the third or second toughest schedule in the world, in the country. Georgia's out. That is wild. And look, they played like crap against Ole Miss. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, my colleague Stuart Mandel wrote an interesting piece today. Like, how do we evaluate 2 losses versus 1 loss? Georgia has played a much, much tougher schedule than Texas. They've got better wins than Texas, and they beat Texas. Texas I don't think has a top 25 win, but it's to me at some point the games have to matter. So Georgia being out is a big surprise. Sam, I know you're scared of San Jose State. I have a Boise State story coming this week, so hopefully they don't lose and that story can stay relevant for a while. Number 11, Ole Miss. They are also the number 11 seed, which makes sense. And Ole Miss is probably in at this point. They finish with I think Florida and Mississippi State is who they have left. I can't see them dropping either of those games at this point. So Ole Miss is probably in. And that's a good job by Lane Kiffin. That was such a big win last week. I mean, all the money they put in. This was the window. They had a favorable schedule. You're getting out of the SEC West. Ole Miss went all in for this year, and it's probably going to pay off. And that's good. It's like it's new blood. Like Ole Miss is not a typical winner. It's fun to see some new teams kind of in that mix. Speaking of the old blood, number 10 in the rankings, number 10 seed, Alabama is in. Makes sense. You beat LSU like that, you're probably going to beat it. Alabama's remaining schedule, by the way, is Mercer, Oklahoma, Auburn. So they are probably in as well. The only thing is, again, like, are they going to make the SEC championship game? Is Ole Miss going to make it? We don't. Again, I'm going to keep saying this because we have no idea how the SEC championship game is going to look because you have all those teams tied up at the top. Number 9, Miami. So Miami drops from number 4 to number 9, but they remain the number 4 seed. That's not a surprise. We expect them to be the highest ranked ACC team. The problem is now if they lose another game or lose that ACC championship game, they could be out, depending on how you view conference championship games. It is a tough situation because other teams that didn't have to play a conference championship game, like a Notre Dame who comes in at number 8 overall, number 9 seed, they're not going to have to play a conference championship game. They'll be in without it. Number 7 overall, number 8 seed, Tennessee. Notre Dame versus Tennessee would be a very fun matchup. By the way, that's number 8 seed Tennessee, meaning Notre Dame would play at Tennessee. Notre Dame, if they win out now at this point, probably getting a home game. It's hard to see them not getting a home game at this point. Finish if they're already at number 9. If you can get an Army win in there, a USC win in there. BYU number 6. Wow. Number 3 seed, number 6 in the rankings. Again, highest ranked Big 12 team. So number 3. They were number 4. No, yeah, they were number 4. Yeah, because they were lower ranked than Miami. How does that happen? And this means BYU. This means Indiana too. Like, so BYU in Indiana have jumped Tennessee, despite BYU getting kind of lucky in beating Utah, and Indiana barely hang on to beat Michigan. Tennessee took care of business against Mississippi State, and yet BYU and Indiana, I assume Indiana's number 5, BYU and Indiana have jumped Tennessee. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I get it. I have BYU ahead of Tennessee in my rankings. Like, it matches what I have. But if you're it doesn't, this isn't consistent from the committee. Yeah, Indiana number 5. Indiana versus Alabama would be the 7-10 matchup. So Indiana last week, they play a Michigan team that's really good in the trenches, a team that does have a lot of talent, and they completely shut down the Indiana offense. I think Indiana averaged like a yard per play in the second half of that game against Michigan. They won like 20-15. I like Indiana. They're maybe the story of the season. I just don't understand how, if you're the committee, you rank them ahead of, you jump Tennessee after what happened last week. What that says to me, helmet win. That you beat Michigan, the defending national champion. It's a marquee win because it's Michigan. That's a 5-5 team right now. That was you barely beat a 5-5 team, and that allows you to jump Tennessee. All right. Penn State comes in at number 4 overall. That would set up a Penn State Ole Miss game, and the 6-11 matchup would be a rematch of last year's Peach Bowl. Peach or Sugar? I don't remember which one it was. I think it was Peach. Penn State versus Ole Miss, winner plays BYU. Man, if you're Ole Miss right there, you might be feeling pretty good about that path as the number 11 seed. I gotta say, this is the last at-large team, and you've got Penn State and then BYU. That is not bad. Number 3 Texas, which we would expect, and I imagine we're going to have number 2 Ohio State, number 1 Oregon. So this is close to the AP poll, I think, as well. And Oregon, Ohio State 1-2. It's not going to finish that way, but it is weird, and that's the thing you have to explain to people. Ohio State's the number 2 team in the country. They are seeded number 5 right now. That is, it's not going to finish that way, but that's the thing. Like, for people who aren't really paying attention to college football, that is the thing that they don't quite understand. Hey, why is Miami ranked number 9 and the number 4 seed? Well, it's because when this format was created, we had 6 power conferences. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I still think it's good. I still think it puts a lot of attention on the conference championship games. Conference championship weekend is going to be nuts. Like, at a level we've never had before. Because every single one of that games is going to matter. Because all those winners want to get in the field or get that first round bye. And we don't know if a loss is going to hurt you or not. If you're a 2-loss SEC team, you probably don't want to lose that SEC championship game. It might get you out. Yeah, so we got 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, 1 ACC, 1 Big 12, 1 Group of 5, and Notre Dame. That's probably how it's going to end up. Now, so, Indiana at number 5, can they get blown out by Ohio State and still be in the field? Being up at number 5 makes me think maybe. The problem is all of these 2-loss SEC teams. If you're Indiana, if you're Notre Dame, if you're some of these others, if you're BYU, Miami, you wanted Georgia to beat Ole Miss last week. because you wanted there to be that would knock Ole Miss out with a third loss. LSU, Alabama, loser was going to get a third loss. LSU, they're out. So you're rooting for Tennessee against Georgia. Because if Georgia wins and beats Tennessee this weekend, they're jumping back in that field. And it's going to be a real mess there. Because you can't put Georgia over Ole Miss or Alabama because they lost to both of them. So what does that do to Notre Dame at 8? That's what I don't know. Cade Connors, Indiana versus Ohio State lose out, or if you think Indiana has one loss and still makes it. The predictors, the models and everything say like 90-something% chance, I think, that Indiana gets in. I would like to think 11-1 Indiana would get in. I think they should get in. They have dominated up until the Michigan game. If you play Ohio State close, you're good. If you play and you lose by 7, 10, 14 points, you're good. I think you're in. If you're losing by 28 or more, or you're down, 21-0 in the first quarter, that's where you start to get nervous because there just aren't spots for good wins on that Indiana schedule. They just aren't there. Michigan wasn't what we thought they'd be. Washington took a big step back. You don't play Oregon, you don't play Penn State. All you got's Ohio State. Like you're gonna have to play pretty well, and as long as they keep that close, which I think they can. The problem is, again, Indiana hasn't beaten Ohio State in like 30, 40 years or something like that. It's been forever. And I don't know what that means. Anybody else, if you have questions or thoughts on the bracket, throw them in the chat. So it sets up a really dramatic finish to the season, which is fun. It's November 12th, and we're going into the final 3 weeks with so much on the line. Like, that is fun. Like, that is what the college football playoff was meant to do. This is why we expanded it. A lot more teams are involved. A lot more is on the line. Home game versus being on the road, getting a bye. Are you going to get left out? The fact that we don't have a truly dominant team in Alabama, a Georgia like we've had has made me, I cannot, like, I get it. It's wild to see that Georgia is not in the field. I had Notre Dame behind Georgia, I think, in mine. And Notre Dame fans are really mad at me. The reason was because I had because Georgia's got a better win than Notre Dame, beating Texas. They got better losses. Their losses are the top 10 teams. Like, that is tough. Now, Notre Dame beats Army and USC. I think they'll be fine, but you got to hope Texas A&M keeps winning too. That is going to be interesting. I'll be there at Texas A&M at the end of the regular season. That could be that's already going to be a crazy game, but it could be for a spot in the SEC championship game. It could guarantee a spot in the playoff. Could be a huge game. Notre Dame, Sam says, Notre Dame has the worst loss in the top 15. Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, Northern Illinois has multiple MAC losses this year. They are, I want to say, 5-4, 4-4 overall, or something like that. Like, it has not been what you want. And yes, Notre Dame has pretty much dominated everybody since. I also think they got a little bit lucky in that Louisville game. There was a lot of weird turnovers in that game. Louisville kind of let that one get away. But yeah, man, like, we knew, like, that Notre Dame loss to Northern Illinois was gonna hang over them because we knew they had an easy schedule, and it was gonna sit there if they didn't drop anything more. To their credit, they haven't lost anything more, and to their credit, the Texas A&M win is better than we thought. The Florida State win is not what we thought. So, like, sometimes you don't know what exactly it's going to be. What CFP matchup are you rooting for? I need to pull the bracket up. I had a bracket here in front of me. Let me just double check that. So, based on what we have in the first round, Ohio State, Boise, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ole Miss, Indiana, Alabama. I think of the game I most look forward to is Penn State, Ole Miss, because we know the ceiling on this Ole Miss team is very high. The ceiling is the floor is a bit low. Think about Ole Miss. Remember, they lost to Kentucky. Kentucky's 3-6. That's a really bad loss. I don't think it's as bad as a Northern Illinois loss, but it's a really bad loss. they have to be ahead of Georgia at this point because they beat them. That's why Alabama's ahead of Ole Miss. And the other loss was to LSU in overtime. But yeah, Penn State Ole Miss. I know it's a rematch of last year, but that would by far be the most fun game. Penn State's defense against that Ole Miss offense would be fun, and knowing that the winner would play BYU. That's the thing about the ranking show. Like before, we only cared about the top 4, and it rarely ever changed. And if there was change below the top 4, we didn't really pay attention. There's so much to talk about every single week with these rankings. That's what makes it fun. So, Buddy says, can you put the 2024 CFP in wrestling terms? Because I'm a big pro wrestling guy. I think it's I don't want to say it's like a battle royal. I'd say the SEC is a Royal Rumble. Because if you win the SEC, you're going to be in a really good spot in the playoff. It's like your main event of WrestleMania. Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri is still at 23. Yeah, I mean, they had to be. That was a crazy game, that finish against Oklahoma. 4 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes, 2 defensive touchdowns. That was a lot. But look, we got a lot of big games still to come. Ohio State, Indiana is going to be fun. Texas A&M is going to be fun. Tennessee, Georgia is going to be fun. By the way, I don't know if anybody's looked at the slate this week. It is not good. I can tell you, for those of you who don't subscribe to the Until Saturday college football podcast we do at The Athletic, we're going to be talking about a lot more things than games this week because the games are not great. There's Tennessee, Georgia, and that's it. The only other ranked game is, I think, Pitt, Clemson. But Pitt isn't in the CFP top 25, so I don't even know if that counts anymore. It's a rough slate this weekend. But usually when we have a rough slate, we get some upsets. That's possible. BYU looks shaky. I think BYU, plays Kansas? Or is it Kansas this week or something? Yeah, it's Kansas. I think they're like a 3-point favorite. Kansas has kind of figured it out. BYU could keep it close there. We got Pitt, Clemson. SMU, Boston College as well. Boston College beat Syracuse. They made a quarterback change. It looks like Thomas Castellanos is taking a couple days away from the team or something, kind of a weird situation. But yeah, Sam, I could see Kansas winning that game. I could too. I have BYU ranked number 4. That doesn't mean I think they're the 4th best team. It's just based on resume and what they've done. You beat Kansas State. You beat SMU on the road. You got 2 top 16 wins now, and you're undefeated. 2 top 16 wins and you're undefeated. To me, that's a good resume. But it's a position where the committee could really ding them if they lose a game. So we've been doing this for almost half hour. This is fun, guys. I appreciate the handful of you who jumped in there and those of you who jumped in the chat. I just, we did a live show for The Athletic last week and we turned that into the podcast. They didn't want to do it this week. So I was like, hey, let me just try it myself. And I picked the wrong camera when I set this thing up. That was my mistake. I've got a much nicer camera, but the lighting in here makes it look okay. And so I just wanted to see if people came by and anybody had any thoughts. So if anybody else has any other questions or any other thoughts, throw it in. Would love to talk about it. But sets up an interesting week. The 2 things I still don't understand: South Carolina ahead of LSU, 1-1, even though LSU beat South Carolina. Ultimately doesn't matter, but it's really one of those things that makes you just really wonder what the heck the committee is thinking there. And then the other is Indiana and BYU jumping Tennessee, despite poor performances. I don't know if that's the committee reacting to public outcry and everybody talking about how disrespected they are or what. I don't know if Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan was waving his finger in the committee's face or something like that, and that convinced BYU to go higher or something like that. I don't know, but interesting change this week, and it makes me curious what the committee will do next week because they're kind of just doing this week to week, it feels like. So I think I'll wrap it up here at just about 30 minutes. So appreciate everybody for jumping on. I had fun doing this. Maybe I'll keep doing this more if people are involved. Figured I might as well try it out. So thanks everybody for watching, for listening, and catch you guys around. Subscribe to The Athletic. We'll have a bunch of stuff on the website about the rankings and everything else still to come. So see you guys.